Au tūtaua mai I runga, tūtaua mai I raro. Tūtaua mai I roto, tūtaua mai I waho. Kia tau te mauri tū, kia tau te mauri ora. Ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tāki e. Ko te haumua, ko te haumuri, ko te hautama wāhine, ko te hautama tāne. Tū mai rā te mauri ko tū I tū hae. Whakataua, 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 ki ruka, whakataua, ki raro. Whakataua, ki roto, whakataua, ki waho. Tōtoro whiti whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e, hui e, tāi ki e. Nei angat mihi kia koutou ko rāka mai I tēnei rā. Mo tēnei hui kaunihera tāi au ki Waitaha, pai ki kite e au koutou. Kari e nei wā, ko hoki te maumahara, te timataka tēnei tau, ko hi autu te rakatira no te hapure nei, no ngā mātā waka, ko Norm Jews tērā, no Waiora, Wairoa, nei te mihi atu ki a koe, e te rakatira I wehi atu te pihopa rihari Wallace, I wehi atu hoki, I te wā I Wairoa, I hoki mai ki te taone o Tautahi, hoki atu ki te marae o Wairewa he te pihopa, moi mai, hoki mai. I te marae o Wairewa, I te wā taupukitia, I te tūpāpaku rihari Wallace, I mate taku rangatira, te au panka. Nā reira, te tokotoru, I wehi atu mai o Tautahi, e kōwhao nui e nei wā, kia rātou, haere, moi mai, hoki mai. Hoki ki te taha Wairewa, I te hāhi ratana, ka mihi atu kia James Robinson hoki, I wehi atu ia hoki, nā reira, he kōwhao nui anō, mo tērā taha, o te hāhi ratana, nā reira, te toko whā, moi mai. Ko hoki mai ki konei, ke raro te mauka tere, I te whānau Bowen, he tānia, toko rima, moi mai, hoki mai, tiraha, whakatā. Rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou. Mo reira pai ki kitia, koutou ko raika mai I tēnei rā, o tēnei hui. E pāna, kaore te mahi ki konei anake, ki ka wāhi hoki, mo te whawhai mo ngā whenua, nā reira kia koutou ko rauka mai tēnei rā. Kia tau te Māori, kei roa tēnei whare, engari kia kaha kia mai, kia manua nui mo te rā kei te hiki mai nei. Nō reira koe, e te chairmana, nei te mihi atu ki a koe mo tō kaha, whakahaere I tēnei rā, nō reira tēnā koe koutou katoa, huri noa, hauri ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora, and thank you, Craig and Jan, for that, the Karakia and the Mihi. Welcome to the 571st meeting of the Canterbury Regional Council. I'd just like to acknowledge, acknowledge for your information that we have David Hill from North Canterbury Press online. I just see Keela has arrived from the press. Welcome, Keela. Good to see you here. And yeah, so we'll move on with no apologies from councillors. We've got no conflicts of interest that have been registered with me. And public forums, deputations, petitions, there are no deputations or petitions have been submitted. However, we do have a public forum today. And so I'd like to welcome Mike Patchett, Chair of Water and Wildlife Habitat Trust, and Cameron Jasper. Speaking on, I'm sure in an early discussion, Mike, that you've been to these things before. So we allow 10 minutes here. We'll give you a bit of a bell at 9. And then when you're finished, we'll allow questions of clarification from councillors to you. So when you're ready, Mike.
Thank you, Council, for taking us down. The Water Wildlife Habitat Trust, in collaboration with WGA Consultants, has a project proposal focused on the Whakakapi catchment. It's all about the preservation and climate change resilience of groundwater-dependent wetlands, waterways, and lakes that are primarily used for recreational use and enjoyment. Our primary objective is to Mananote Wai for the Whakakapi, which is effectively healthy waterways, landscapes, and wildlife. Again, it's basically providing the social, environmental, and cultural well-being for our community is probably one of its most important attributes. but the project also focuses on conserving rare and threatened flora and fauna. As you may know, in 1926, the Waimak was causing a bit of a flooding problem in North Canterbury and possibly New Zealand. It's bounded by the mighty Waimakariri River in the northwest side of urban Christchurch. Because of its history, it is a complex system of springs, wetlands, waterways and lakes in a relatively small area. And importantly, it facilitates the Groins Regional Park and the Whakatau Recreational Reserve as primary recreational use areas. Although it's, whilst it's good to fair ecological health, it's patchy. This is a collation of the ecological health information that ECAN produced for us a couple of years ago. It basically shows a bit of a scatter from good being green to red being bad throughout the catchment. So it's, while it's probably the best ecological health in Christchurch, it does have its localised problems at a tributary level. Importantly, I'd like to show you this one because this is ECAN land bounding both sides of the and through the Otakaikino. So you're a significant landowner, particularly along the riparian areas. And there's an area just opposite the Whakatau Reserve of particular interest to us in this project. Well, in terms of other landowners, the pink zone there in the middle was the Shipley's property. It's been recently, well, last year purchased by the Airports Corporation. And that is really the hub of all the wetlands and spring feeds that keep the Otakaikino and the lakes in their current state. The other big yellowy patch is the Isaacs Conservation and Wildlife Trust. Importantly in that is that we've got some major chunky landowners with significant willingness, I suppose, for conservation and preservation of environmental values. In terms of those values, I think the Otakaikino comparatively has probably some of the highest ecological, social and cultural values of any catchment probably in Canterbury. It has good to fair ecological health given its history. It's feeds from the Waimak. It has significant ecological values with rare and threatened wildlife, both terrestrial and aquatic. Mihi Kai and Waitapu values for tangata whenua are significant in this catchment. And importantly, its facilities and amenities for open space recreation and enjoyment by our community, again, significant. But it is under threat. We have a long-term declining groundwater level coming through from ECAN's modelling, groundwater studies. We've got a changing climate that's going to give us longer, drier and lower flows during summer. Weed and pest infestation. We've got pollution loads with passages and algal blooms. So it's a good catchment, but it does have its issues.
We envision that natural-based solutions would be our project guiding principle. This is just a schematic of like a constructed wetland for treating stormwater with sedimentation ponds and infiltration basins for storing additional groundwater. And natural-based solutions, generally speaking, slow water down. So we envision that kind of contributing extra groundwater within the mid to upper catchment could release, store and release groundwater slowly to these downstream spring-fed tributaries to the north and south branch of the Otakaikino. Water treatment is provided by these kind of solutions by sedimentation ponds, riparian channels, and wetlands. Natural attenuation is also provided in soil and aquifers. Constructed wetlands or improving wetlands that are already there or degraded can also add. These are some examples of the existing waterways. This would be a perennial waterway connected to groundwater and these spring heads in the mid catchment. And as you move up in the catchment, you see more of these non-perennial or seasonal shallow wetlands that are under probably the highest threat in terms of declining groundwater levels and seasonal declining flows. There was a recent remote sensing survey in the catchment. This is just an elevation model, and you can see kind of in the mid catchment these known spring heads to these tributaries that feed the south branch on the south side and the north branch on the north side. And then as you move up in the catchment, you get towards the quarry kind of areas where there may be more space for adding groundwater within the catchment for adding to the resiliency of the spring flows. And then within the mid catchment and lower catchment, those are the existing wetlands that could also benefit from natural-based solutions. And we're proposing as stage one to kind of gather project concepts and advice from and collaborate with partnerships. And that would be a high-level assessment looking at different natural-based solutions for the resiliency or improvement of these springs and waterways and wetlands. Stage two would be info and options that are identified in stage one, and then stage three would be funding and implementation. This is just kind of reiterating our stage one conceptualization mapping project would be using this latest remote sensing information. That includes the LiDAR, thermal data, and ground truthing some of these spring heads and wetlands, and development of options to improve their resilience. And yeah, and then stage two is.
So that's the sort of the main bulk of our presentation, but I hope we've actually sparked your interest in the proposition. We're trying to build a collaborative partnership at this point in time, and I have discussions underway with the Airport Corporation, the major landowner. We'd like, I suppose, the council to consider looking into this proposition in more detail through their staff, and potentially joining the collaborative partnership. There are major landowners, your major regulators. Inside the organisation, we have significant technical and human resources and information systems that could be used for the project. So I'll leave that with you and hope we can continue these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jasper, for that. Questions from Councillor Davies and Councillor Karakia, then Councillor McKenzie, and then Councillor Byrnes.
Thank you. I've been informed that we have a bittern population that migrates between Travis Wetland to Whakakapi, which is again part of our regional estate, and Otakaikuno. Is this your understanding? Do we have a bittern population?
There's a wildlife corridor that goes through the Waimak Regional Park, across the Whakakapi, and then joins the Styx vegetation and moves through to the Avon and Travis wetlands. So logically, if a bird can fly, it probably connects.
Just reminding councillors, this is like 5-minute periods, and the other councillor that I didn't recognise was Councillor Sweets. So
mine was pretty simple. I mean, I'd be quite keen just to go down there and actually see it in person one day. So I mean, if you want to extend an invite down to, some of us councillors would be quite keen.
It may be an inappropriate question, but the CIL's intent in buying Shipley land, was that for development, or is that for just to protect their asset base in terms of encroachment? Are they a compatible partner with what you're proposing?
Obviously, but as much as I understand talking to them, they're in the process of doing a master plan of land use for that whole area of their new purchase with Boffa and Miskell, and they are certainly interested in our discussions about the nature conservation side, wetlands and stream preservation, supporting open space recreation. But there is a suggestion there may be some commercial attributes to that land in the future.
And I would just, Boffa and Miskell, as part of their master planning, is including natural-based solutions for also improving the wetlands and things that are there.
Thanks, Councillor McKenzie. That was a very similar question to mine, so no, thank you.
Tēnā kōrua. Mr. Chair, before I start, though, I want to just acknowledge the mihi and the Karakia timataka that our two colleagues actually performed this morning. But just to acknowledge those that passed away, one was actually Norm Jews, who was the head of Te Mātai Waka, actually here in Christchurch. The other one was the Māori Bishop of Te Waipounamu, Rihare Wallace. and the other one was one of the Hahi Ratana ministers, James Robinson. And it's apt actually that my whanaunga over there actually, because two of those actually, and also Theo Bunker, rangatira from Wairewa, actually also passed away, all from Wairewa. So I just want to acknowledge that. The other thing too is to acknowledge everyone here that are in this sort of council meeting this morning. E mihi atu kia koe, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, salam alaikum, shalom. Thank you. Now to my question to you two. O tu kai kino, and that whole presentation. I looked through here, you talk about mahinga kai, you talk about tangata whenua. So what, I just wanted to know what the relationship is with mana whenua, which is tuahuriri.
Stage, project proposal sense.
None. Okay.
Thank you.
Last question. Just, yeah, quick. How far progressed are you in the nature-based solution design, or is this sort of conceptual at this point? And I'm interested in whether, if it is developing, whether there's any risk of hold-up on the decision around use and take, which
Maybe I can start on that. The essential ingredient in this project feasibility is getting landowners' involvement and participation in it. So we're in discussions with the Airports Corporation at this moment. We'd like to actually have the same discussions with you guys as landowners. So until those discussions start to unfold, we can't really look at options.
Thanks, Mike. We've come to the end of this. In Cameron, so we have a notice, a recommendation here that we'll put that receives the public forum from Mike Patchen and Cameron Jasper of Water Wildlife Habitat Trust regarding agenda item 4.1.1. Public forum provides a reply to Mike Patchen and Cameron Jasper as soon as practical. Thank you, Craig, and seconded by Dion. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. So thank you for your public forum, and we'll be getting back to you. Thank you. Look, I must admit that your acknowledgement, Councillor Karakia, we probably need a space for that, and that's probably my fault that I didn't recognise that, and with that we will allow that in the future. So after the Karakia Mihi, maybe if the people got some comment in terms of what has been said, then we should allow that. So we'll note that. So we turn to item notices of motion 6. So just on the notices of motion that we have this morning, I'm going to put forward to you that we suspend our standing orders, temporary suspension of our standing orders for these items. And the following standing orders to be suspended to enable a more informal discussion on this process. Our standing orders, if those who don't understand, is when 3 have spoken for and 3 have spoken against, then that's the end of the debate, and we must put that then to the members. I think there's an opportunity here for these 2 items to be, and because we've got such a big council of 16 of us, that we need to have a more formal opportunity, especially since these are notices of motion are involving 2 councillors. So 17.2 that we will suspend is time limits on speakers, although we don't want to abuse that, please. Members may speak only once, and the limit on the number of speakers. I would suggest that you only speak only once, but there's no limit on the number of speakers. So I need a mover for those. Against. So that's carried. So thank you for that. That'll hopefully allow a wider range of discussion on these 2 subjects. So we have 2 notices of motion, one from Councillor Greg Byrnes this morning and one from Councillor Genevieve Robinson, and we will begin with Councillor Byrnes. Councillor Byrnes' notice of motion for councillors is on page 5 of the agenda. So I've also agreed that with Councillor Byrnes that we will allow this to be recorded. So that's why it's being recorded. So when you're ready.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge everyone who is attending today. Transparency is the most important feature of democracy. Your attendance is especially important here today, given we're still to live stream our meetings for people unavailable to make it here in person. Secondly, I want it on record that I condemn all civilian deaths, call for an immediate ceasefire and release of all civilians. This notice of motion I bring today is the outcome of an email in August 2023, a follow-up letter in September 2023, and a presentation to Council on December 13, 2023 by Mr. John Minto, representing the Palestine Solidarity Network of Aotearoa. Things have changed dramatically over this time, with some 900 Israeli deaths, 138 Israelis remaining as Hamas hostages, over 28,000 Palestinian deaths, more than 10,000 of these children, and over 8,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons. I had intended to move the proposed actions of these motions at the meeting, but was advised by staff that the motion may not be included in the agenda if it was not accompanied by a staff report, which of course needs an investigation. These motions are simple. It is for staff to investigate the Canterbury Regional Council supporting Aotearoa New Zealand government policy as expressed through United Nations Security Council Resolution 233. In particular, amending our procurement policy to exclude purchasing goods and services from illegal Israeli settlements, and in implementing such a policy, the Canterbury Regional Council would take a particular note of the list of companies identified by the United Nations Human Rights Council as being involved in the building or maintenance of illegal Israeli settlements. And secondly, for staff to report back to our March Council meeting. Right, the obvious question is, what has this got to do with the Canterbury Regional Council? Well, quite simply, it is the right and principled thing to do. The illegal settlements are a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of a two-state solution and a just and comprehensive peace. We have a set of organisation values on our website. These values do not cease at the region's borders. Remaining silent and being neutral is actually to side with the powerful. I'm a nobody, but I'm an elected nobody. And it would be remiss, even criminal, for me to ignore any action, no matter how small, that is available to me through the privilege of my position. Call out what is obvious for all decent human beings to see, the displacement and brutalisation through oppression and apartheid. We know, well, those of us who remember what we were doing back at the 1981 Springbok tour, that waiting on our government to do the right thing, along with protests by people, is not sufficient to bring about the fall of an apartheid government. Rather, boycott, divestment and sanctions are needed to support that change. And what a change can be made. We now have South Africa taking the lead with a case to the international. Can be had at the March meeting with the staff report on the investigation. I will finish by asking my colleagues to support the investigation and staff report, and don't let this council be seen as a shiver looking for a spine. Thank you.
I think, sorry. Thank you for that. Before we ask for a second, people can see the motion. I'm going to put it up while you were talking. Otherwise, you would have been very small in the corner when people were looking at this, and we didn't want that to happen. That's why we didn't do that. So there's the motion, and it's specifically in terms of asking for that advice. So if I've got a second for that, please. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Diche. Would you like to speak to that, Paul? You're not speaking to that. All right, so I'll open up the floor for others that would want to speak to the notice of motion by Councillor Byrnes. Councillor South. Yeah,
just really simply, to me, there's a UN Human Rights Council list that's been developed. There's process and protocols that have gone through. So it's not just a randomised list. It's really clearly looking for activities that are occurring on illegally occupied Palestinian land. There's an annual review that checks that those companies are still having that continuing with that activity. And so they can change and come off the list, and that has happened. I think it's about 15 companies to date. And so, I mean, I would hope as an organisation that we would, if we knew of any companies behaving in an illegal way, we would not support them, regardless of where they come from or where that takes place. But here we have a UN-supported list, which to me is really significant. It's not some tin pot organisation. There are 2 businesses that I saw on the list that we potentially could use. I don't know if we do. I understand from the report that we don't. But
Okay, Councillor, just remind you of this about our procurement policy. Others?
I just wanted to say that I found it a really gutsy move on behalf of Councillor Byrnes to put this forward, and I strongly support it as well. Thank you.
So I'm going to support the motion on the basis that it is an investigation to see how it could perhaps fit into, or something similar fit into, our procurement policy. Looking at our procurement policy, there are a couple of areas that I've noted that are worthy of consideration. One of the policy purposes is to highlight legislation and policies that affect our procurement framework. The other one is rules and principles of our procurement policy related to and guided by the New Zealand Government procurement guidelines. I'm not sure what they are. Investigation. There's also in our procurement policy a commentary on ethical issues in terms of encourage receptive to new ideas and ways of doing things. But it doesn't really specifically say anything about international law or the anything to do with. One really is the legislative obligations. Again, the New Zealand Government Act 2002, which details, Section 14 details the principles relating to local authorities. And also the principles of charter and rules of New Zealand government procurement in property. I suppose, even though the motion is specifically geared towards the current Palestinian Gaza issue and the genocide that's occurring there, in my mind, if we're going to perhaps look at something that is more broader and looking specifically perhaps at international legislation and how the New Zealand government has responded, and if New Zealand government has responded, then supporting that within our procurement process. And it seems that we have the indication of that, but there's nothing specific at that. So really, it's and if in doing that, that helps support change in whichever part of the world these sorts of horrible things happen, then it's supporting our responsibilities in the international community.
Again, I'll remind you, it's about our current procurement policy, and if we want to go wider than that, Councillor Hedge, I think that's another discussion. And maybe that leads on. No, I don't want you to reply to that, but maybe that leads on. But the specific thing here in the notice of motion is about our procurement policy. I know there's a lot of stuff around that, emotional stuff around that, but it's about what we do in terms of our procurement policy.
What I'm saying is, at the moment, we don't do anything in along those sort of lines. And what I'm suggesting in the investigation process, is it possible to do something? How could we deal with those issues that are outside our current procurement policy?
Okay, so I think that if we go wider, I think that's going to take longer. Councillor Byrnes has been quite specific about the 20th of March. We need to allow any width on this to have some time. So that's my concern with that. Councillor McKenzie, then Councillor Sunkel, then Councillor Mackay. Go.
Just with regard to our procurement policy, because I haven't been able to find it on our website for the documents. Would this, anything that we put in our procurement policy, does it extend to those who successfully get contracts? So how far removed would this sort of decision apply? So
that's a great question, right? That really is a great question. But I think we need to get this motion to where it gets to. If it passes, that becomes part of that advice. I think that's the intention.
It could inform my decision though.
I can't inform that any more than the procedural matter I have in front of me at the moment.
Putting aside Councillor Byrnes' clear anti-Jewish Israeli bias and focusing on the wording of the motion, it seems to me that references to Israel specifically are probably inappropriate for this government, this council to consider. But whether we do business with businesses that are involved in illegal activities, as Councillor Southworth touched on, is perhaps a decision that this council should make. But in doing so, and you take away decisions based on race or ethnicity or religion, because that would be inappropriate for this council. And unfortunately, this motion includes that bias. If we are to exclude doing business with anybody involved in illegal activities, any business or country involved in illegal activities, I imagine it won't leave this council many people left to do business with. And so when we are considering procurement policy, do we want to go down that rabbit hole, or do we want to focus on what is the best outcomes for our ratepayers?
Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I presume that the motion will proceed and a report will come back, but it really does concern me that we are facing 1 to 3 years of absolute critical challenge to this organisation in Canterbury, whether it's through our consenting, compliance and monitoring and the change of government and policy. We look at our rivers and water and the resilience that we have, the transport systems that we have, and government challenges that we will face financially for that. Critical things that should be at the forefront of our mind, and yet we seem to be here having conversations as important as they might be in a global sense. I just wonder where our focus as a council is on those really important things that are important to us.
Thank you. Any further comment from any councillor? Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, look, I'm really struggling with this motion, and I definitely support John's view around is this where we should actually be focusing our efforts? Should we be focusing staff's efforts around it? Look, I find places around it, and I just think, how can we separate this one out? So for me, I don't think I'll be supporting this today.
Councillor Clark, and then Councillor Eath.
Mihi, I looked out there today and saw the Tino Raka flag along with the Palestinian flag, and then wondered what the connection was. Only took me a few seconds actually, because it talks about loss of land. It talks about a lot of things that Māori have actually been through, but wasn't just with one nation. It was actually with a number of them. But I want to come back to what we're talking about here, because it's a notice of motion, and it's also about procurement. And so I want to keep it that tight, because one of the parts of our procurement policy is about ethical issues. I understand that. But I tautoko or support what Councillor Mackenzie was saying, and also Councillor Sunkel, is particularly around priorities, but also creating precedents. And if we are actually going to solely look at one particular case, when we should be, if we're going to do this and create a precedent, well, then we should be looking right across the board. So that's where I sit. You can guess where it is. Up to you. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor East.
Yeah, thank you. I also support the sentiment. It's a question of, where do we draw the line? And I think Councillor Mackay was on the point there a moment ago. There are countless unsavoury acts around the world. And I would say to the meeting, well, China took over Tibet, suppressed everything, and do we then sort of start saying, well, we shouldn't be trading with China for their atrocities in Tibet? So I think we have priorities within our organisation, and I don't think we should be going down this track. So I won't be.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sweeks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I will support the motion. I always support getting information and understanding that one that's close to my heart. Obviously, when I was in the Navy was Syria, which I did a lot of study on for my principal warfare training. And we can't forget all of those things as well within these, if we're going to open this can of worms. But I will support getting the information back because I want to know what it is. I want to understand it a little bit better, and then we can make an informed decision.
Right, before I go to you, back to you for right of reply, Councillor Deche, you'll be first, and then Councillor Byrnes. I will remind you that this is a massive subject, it's a big stage. This particular thing about the purity of our procurement policy under UN 2334, that's the issue that we're talking about here, right? And I would hope, and I'm going to support this notice of motion going through, because I think there's somewhere along the line we need to draw a line under this, one way or the other. Councillor Swiggs, I support what you just said, and you know, as much as we've all got conscience on these things, I think that you know, are we losing sight of what our prime role is? So I mean, that's, as a chairman, that's what I'll be saying to you. Councillor Deche, would you like to speak as the seconder? Would you like to speak to this?
Kia ora. I think Councillor Byrnes here has really covered it. I think the other supporters have also covered this point quite well. I think it's just a matter of conscience and where people want to sit with this. So, be that as it may, you know, let the vote be held.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone who put themselves forward to have a say and opinion. I think that's the most important thing. Dialogue is key to this whole thing. I would especially like to thank Councillor Edge for getting the procurement policy out and looking through it and seeing some relevant passages where it would be a good lead-in for our staff and maybe to see where we go from there. But at the end of the day too, it's quite simple. You have to look at yourselves. We all do. Look at ourselves in the mirror. You make your call. I have mentioned this a couple of times. I'll say it again. Hinari Rakiihi Atau, the late Upuku Runanga of Naituahureri, used to say, people may change, but values do not. And on that, thank you.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for that, Councillor Byrnes. And that brings us to the voting on this notice. Yes, Greg.
Can we have division, please?
We're just going to get there. I was going to get there. I would have got there, Greg. I would have got there. So division is be asked for, and for those in the room, a division is where governance advisor to my right, Petraea, will call the names out, and people will call out yay or nay to those, and then we'll add those up and we'll say whether it goes or it doesn't. So that's the process that we're going to use. Petraea.
Councillor Southworth.
Support.
Councillor Sunkel.
Abstain.
Councillor Swiggs.
For.
Councillor Robinson. 4. Councillor Edge.
4.
Councillor Pauline.
I support this.
Councillor Cranwell.
Aye, tautoko.
Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Deche.
4.
Councillor East. Councillor Davies.
Yes.
Councillor Byrnes,
4,
Councillor Karakia,
Abstain.
Councillor Mackay.
So the result of that is that the motion passed, that we will get staff advice on this, and the voting was 10 for, 4 against and 2 abstentions. So thank you for that. I think we'll just take a couple of minutes now, and if those people that don't want to be in for the other stuff that we do, they can leave. And those people that want to stretch their legs for 2 minutes, we'll come back in 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. So our second notice of motion is being brought to us today by Councillor Robinson. And so we'll ask you to speak now, Genevieve. So it's quite a long notice of motion, and the recommendation that the council take. Are you happy that we put that up at the end, or do you want that up now? At the end. Okay. Right. When you're.
Thank you for everyone who's come today in the audience first and foremost, and thank you for listening to my notice of motion. The sea defines us, connects us, separates us. Most of us experience only its edges. Perpetually renewing and destroying, the sea proposes a beginning and an ending, an alternative to our landlocked state, an existence to which we are tethered when we might rather be set free. In the words of Philip Hoare, the sea inside. Literally the lungs of life. For such a vital resource, we offer so little protection in return. At a regional level, we not only have the ability to protect, we actually have a duty to protect. Many elements of the Regional Coastal Environment Plan 2005 are no longer fit for purpose. They no longer reflect the raft of issues faced for both the natural environment, our coastal communities, and our endemic species. The New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement 2010 is very prescriptive and directive. It sets out a number of very clear legal requirements for protecting our coastal environment. Having a coastal plan that is fit for purpose is one and is key. In the 2021 to 31 long-term plan, there was a clear direction to have an updated coastal plan notified by the end of this year. Could have is not the same as will have. This was one of many opportunities to identify new areas of increased risk, pressures, and to mitigate the effects of these. In the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, there are 3 key areas that I wish to draw your attention to. Policies 1, 6, and 11. Policy 1 acknowledges that the coastal environment, both flora and fauna, although interlinked, are unique for each and every region and location. It allows for the identification and recognises Indigenous coastal species, including migratory birds, and the areas of historical value and natural character of both the coastline itself and its inhabitants. As it stands, our Regional Coastal Environment Plan 2005 fails to not only identify these areas, allows for the creation of buffer areas and sites of significant Indigenous biological diversity and historic heritage value within this coastal environment. The Regional Coastal Environment Plan 2005, which is almost 20 years old, fails to address these adequately. Policy 11, a vital component of the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement 2010, is far more prescriptive and directive. That a regional coastal plan must identify and avoid, remedy or mitigate adverse effects of activities on Indigenous biological diversity, including specific species Maui and hectares, the New Zealand fairy tern, and the New Zealand southern dotterel. A coastal plan and awareness of the effects of climate change on ecosystem health and the cumulative effects of human-based activities on marine species. I have sent councillors and others some maps, one of which has 3 key colour-coded boundaries. Yeah, that's it. The red is the largest area, highlighting the habitat and distribution of the New Zealand dolphin. It is an area also used by a number of other species, including migratory whales, sharks, New Zealand fur seals, sea lions, and many seabirds. In fact, in Banks Peninsula alone, it hosts more than 4,600 different terrestrial and marine species. The light green area identifies current set net restrictions, and the dark green line, trawl restrictions. However, a number of trawl vessels have the ability and permission to actively fish within 2 nautical miles from our coastline. Sometimes, though, it takes case law to clarify a council's role, especially when considering marine protection. An exclusion zone put in place by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council following the Rena oil spill eventually paved the way for a landmark court ruling entitled the Matiti decision. The judges confirmed that each and every regional council not only has the jurisdiction to control the taking of fish, it has a duty for the purpose of maintaining indigenous biodiversity or other resource management values. We also know that where fisheries restrictions, there are fewer dolphin mortalities, such as with the implementation of set net restrictions. Far fewer animals became bycatch. However, in the past 6 months, there have been 11 reported deaths, 7 or 63% of which were fisheries related, 5 trawl and 2 set net. Referring to table 2. Oh, sorry, well, not quite yet, sorry. Out of these 7 fisheries related deaths, 6 or 86% occurred within the Canterbury Regional Council's territory sea. That's nearly 87% actually. Can we refer to map 2, please? Thank you. As it stands, the fisheries related mortality limit, of which is an acceptable limit to fisheries, is 20 for Banks Peninsula alone. In September 23, a fishing vessel ran aground, as we all know, in Shell Bay, Banks Peninsula. I strongly believe that if our coastal plans had included fisheries restrictions, particularly trawl, as reflected in other regional council plans nationwide, it's highly likely that that would not have happened. Since 2023, Northland Regional Council, Taranaki Regional Council, Bay of Islands and Waikato have also reviewed or implemented changes to their coastal plan. That's why today I ask for your support in progressing my notice of motion, requesting that staff please report back by the end of April with what we can do to implement targeted change based on those policies in the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, reflecting not only the resources needed, costs, but whether or not it's a possible reality. Thank you. I'll just finish by saying one extra piece of a poem. Meet me down by the water's edge and listen intently to its wisdom. For all that you yearn and all that you are is right there in the cool of the wave. The sea is within all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve. And we've got a seconder as Councillor Byrnes has seconded that. So, I didn't realise that you had a seconder. So if you'd rather Councillor Southworth second that, then we'll put Councillor Southworth down as the seconder. And then can I ask Councillor Southworth if she wants to speak?
Yeah, kia ora. I will speak at the end. Thank you.
Actually, hang on. You've got an addition. I got an addition. Yeah.
Yes, you did. He wants to add the 2-year agreement.
You've got the resolution here. You've got the change. No, I haven't. Actually, I want, it's in my address, actually. Yeah.
Kia ora tātou, nei te mihi atu ki a koutou, me tautoko hi au tēnei tono. Yeah, I support this this motion in principle, and as Dion said on the last motion that we need all the information so we can make an informed decision. After speaking to Ngā Runaka for mine on the Te Pātaka Rakai Hautu on Banks Peninsula over the and since 2016 with Elizabeth Cunningham. Elizabeth Councillor Cunningham brought this up as a major issue regarding him, and we try to move this forward. And then with integrated planning and looking at reviewing the coastal plan, but that has moved on to the RPS. So Ngā Runanga are supportive in principle that they look at the coastal plan because it's been an issue, especially on the peninsula for that time. But they hold their right regarding Article 2 of the treaty of Te Tiriti, especially with regards to their whenua, their fisheries, and the moana, and what it means to customary fishing. It's not until April that all Genevieve is asking for is that we need an investigation, and that's what I'll support today. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kai whakahaere. First of all, tautoko my colleague councillor Ian Cranwell in his kōrero. Can I, first of all, because again, Ngā Runanga, and when we talk about Ngā Runanga, we're talking actually about the takiwā actually from the Waio awa actually down to the Rakaia. And so when you look at those takiwā, Ian has actually articulated the thoughts of Ngā Runanga o Te Pātako Rakai Hautu. I also, and particularly because I live at Rapaki, have a vested interest and also have those relationships that Ian also has. The other part of it, though, is Tuahuriri, because there you have actually quite a large part of the coastline, actually, which I want to actually pass on the tautoko and thanks to the mahi that you have done with this notice of motion. It was articulate, and it was actually something that has been talked about, as Councillor Cranwell has said, for quite some time. And it's all about balance, actually. Also about relationships, though, commercial relationships. It's about environmental relationships. It's about whakapapa relationships as well. So just to also, I want to tautoko what Councillor Cranwell said, because there's the commonality there amongst Ngā Runanga. And so Tuahuriri is also, and I'm not sure whether this is where I talked to you originally this morning about possibly putting in a request, but we'll put it there because Councillor Cranwell has actually articulated quite well. But basically, where I'm sitting, we will support this, but the support is initial, and they want to reserve the right for further discussion on Te Tiriti issues, particularly pertaining to Article 2. And that's around the protection of lands and fisheries and other tauka. If they could have that, then, that is, and I would believe that there wasn't, after talking to you this morning, there isn't any issue there. So you have actually the support of the runanga that I have talked to, and particularly Tuahuriri. So kia ora. Thank you again for that, for the work that you've done on this. I mean.
just respond a bit to that, that what you've just said there, Councillor Karakia. I think that's a secondary consideration almost, because we need to ensure that, you know, that the process that we're going to use for this, that we've got the capacity, we've got the money, and we've got the time to do the things that are being, that this is being asked. So it's the purity of this goes first. Does this organisation, that's my point I'd like to make, does this organisation have that capacity to do that after the discussions we've had? And that's why I will also support it, because I think we need to understand that. Councillor, yeah, Paul.
Tēnā koe, Genevieve. Nei rā te mihi ki a koe mō tō mahi uaua I tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira hei whakatiaki I ngā kararehe o te moana o Waitaha, te tai o maha nui, tēnei te mihi ki a koe. So yeah, I was first of all want to congratulate Genevieve for bringing this notice of motion and for your continued and courageous mahi in this space for our marine biodiversity, but also getting progress on a coastal plan, an updated coastal plan. And I acknowledge your previous deputations too to this council in the last term before you're a councillor, which shows your dedication to this mahi, particularly around the protection for upukuhue Hector's dolphins. And I understand the reasons why we haven't got an updated coastal plan. I've been involved in those decisions. And of course, our proposed course of action for an integrated plan. However, it doesn't mean we can't and shouldn't bring forward work for specific outcomes. I'm aware of the Motiti decision and of the thinking and work that you've been doing.
Craig has touched on it really, and that we've already got a process, or as I understand the process, in terms of reviewing our coastal plan within the integrated plan. If this motion is passed, does that interfere with the current process we're already in?
Yes, that's the advice that'll come back. And it's exactly the same as the first deputation. Is this seeks clarity on what we do. It reinforces the decisions that we've made, were they the right ones? It takes into account where we're at politically. So I think the opportunity for that, and it could be quite short advice to us actually, but I think that's what this does. And I think the other thing that I would say about this is that we need to understand that when that advice comes to us, that's the advice that this organisation, that's what they're capable of doing. And the thing that we need to understand is then as governance, if we want something else to happen, then something gets pushed. So we need to understand that, and I'm quite happy that that's where we're at. So does that answer what you were asking?
Well, my problem is I don't know. But I will take your assurance that it does. Yeah.
Thanks. I've probably lots of questions on this, but I mean, some of the stuff's been touched on around the process in place that we've already got, particularly around our integrated planning. And staff have actually advised us that they can actually around the importance of our working in partnership with Ngā Runanga. That's an organisational goal. You've touched on the capacity and the funding and what is going to have to go if we're going to do this. So I have all these questions that can't be answered. Now, council has a responsibility to obviously review plans at the 10-year time frame, but there is no obligation, as I understand it, for any changes to be made if they're not required. I also would like to know, is there support from the Minister of Conservation, because they're the ones that make the final decisions on regional coastal plans rather than us as a council. So some of those sorts of things are questions that I would like to ask. I would have liked to have had it today so I can inform my decision today, but I'm probably not going to get it.
So I think that's something that needs to be unpacked, Genevieve. And well, at the end, my question to you would be the purity of the process that you're looking at. Is it a complete overhaul of the coastal plan, a complete redo? So I think you need to answer that. That may put you at ease. So we need to go to Councillor Byrnes and then Councillor Sunkel
Kia ora, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm so proud of you, Councillor Robinson. I think the work that you put into this is fantastic. Thank you to Nuku and to Yayan, because all we have heard from our partners through our project is coast to coast to coast. As a naive first-time councillor, I came in, previous councillors like Lan, very excited about the mountain sea concept, everything integrated. How progressive, how good is this? Only to find it chipped away, beaten away, sold away, whatever it may be. And yep, there's no statutory requirement to review a plan after 10 years, but nearly 20 years, it's the long overdue. So again, just fantastic. And
process that we have and are entering into under the regional policy statement and the planning processes. So we have a process underway. We are aware of the costs, which are significant, but we are travelling in the direction. So I do really wonder why we are here today when we do have a process in play. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to support the motion in principle on the basis that it is a scoping exercise and looking at the costs and resources required. Coastal issues are something that's pretty dear to my heart, and whilst this one focuses on biodiversity and I'm a hazards, which is not mentioned in this particular report. So I think ongoing, I'd like to just get the information as to where we're at and where we're going and make an informed decision once we've had that. Thank you.
Right, so I'm just going to go a wee bit off track here because I think we've got pretty good support around the table for this to go ahead. I think the thing that we need to uncover, Genevieve, for you, and you can speak twice on this, you can give me this piece of information and the room this piece of information. What is it you're seeking? Is it a complete overhaul of the coastal plan, or is it specific issues that you're interested in?
I'm seeking specific opportunity and scope regarding the policies I briefed on. In particular, absolute coastline issues like inshore trawling in particular, and the hazards associated with such vessels operating actively fishing close to our coast. Can I actually carry on now to do my final word? Okay.
As eloquently as Genevieve, who's got decades of passion behind this, and I think that was really clear to all of us, and thank you for keep driving this. For me, it's just as simple as the scientific brain in me says. We have bycatch happening with species that are indigenous, are important, are threatened. That's seabirds and marine mammals, for example. We have increasing risk from climate change as well, human-induced, and so we just cannot be complacent anymore about bycatch. And specifically, the area that I'm understanding Councillor Robinson is looking for something quite, scoping of something that can occur quite rapidly, is to really diminish the amount of bycatch we have. Another opportunity there is also to reduce the risk of oil spill, which is a sort of indirect impact on wildlife. And we've certainly indicated before that we want to do a coastal plan. There's been various things that have played out. That means we're not now notifying one at the end of this year. But this is a neat piece of work that I think I'd love to see scoped, and we can then make a decision on the next step. Thank you.
I just also want to draw attention to that there's currently a rahui in place, imposed by Kuku Rarata. So digging into that as well, that's still in place, goes out to 6 nautical miles and links 6 runanga along the coast. That's the scope of it. So at this stage, it doesn't seem unreasonable to look into this. And if we carry on at this rate, with particularly Hector's dolphin deaths, we would surpass the dolphin deaths for Banks Peninsula alone by the end of the year. So what was the date? 2028, the end of it, notified for the coastal plan. With all these delays, I feel like it's just simply not good enough. If we can target areas of concern to different runanga and fisheries, we know that fisheries should be imposed on coastal plans. It's done in Northland. The Environment Court proved that it was missing. So there's a risk for us too. So we really need to scope this, and I really hope I get your support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. In terms of what I've heard, I don't think we need a division around the table. So I'm just going to put your motion. It is quite a long one, and I don't want to really scroll it over, but most of the councillors understand what it means and have spoken to it. So I'll put that to you. So all those people in favour, please say aye. All those against? All those abstaining? You're abstaining, Claire. Thank you. Do you want it noted, Claire? Do you want that noted? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for your deputation. I think we've got much more clarity about where you're coming from, which is good. Oh, didn't we? Oh yeah, I thought I said that, but I didn't. There's no extraordinary business under 5. Either I didn't say that, or you weren't listening. Go back and check the tapes. Okay, let's move on now. We'll go to item 7, which is the unconfirmed council minutes from the 7th of December and the 13th of December. We had those two. We had a short meeting on 13th. Would someone that was, has anybody got any issues of clarity around those? Someone then like to confirm the minutes from those two meetings are true. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Claire. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Report items, item 8, and Petrea, that you will name down on that, and these are on pages 75 to 85. Council Resolution Status Report, February 2024. And I'm pretty sure they're all green, aren't they? They're all green? Yeah, they're all green, so they are all complete. So I don't think we need to dwell on that too much. The resolution notes the status of previous resolutions provided the Council Resolution Status Report 2024. The mover, please, for that. Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, there seems to be a difference between your document and our document. There are orange. Well, which one's right? Is it your one or is it this one? Mine's right. Okay. No. Well, the only thing I was interested in was the progress, and that's maybe all it is in terms of the governance arrangements for the Urban Waterways and Estuaries Joint Committee.
So that piece of work which Councillor Davies is involved in consideration line, there's no formal process in that, but one of the things we're trying to establish is the boundary of the Christchurch Drainage Board, and seeking maps that outline that, because that then we have got some authority within that area, but outside of that area, we're just trying to establish that. Joe, have you got more information on it?
I think we mentioned it last week. I think you might have been here, Grant, that it's going to go to the governance between the regional council and city council.
Are we still on the accuracy of the various meetings? Resolution. I just still on the first council meeting. There's a second council meeting where there is an inaccuracy that needs pointing out, and that is the minutes of the 570th meeting. It talks about the public forums, and I note that the minutes mention Councillor Byrnes and Councillor Sunkel leaving the meeting and rejoining the meeting. Councillor East and I both left the meeting before the public forum.
Councillor East, are you happy enough now? Councillor Ward. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. Previous committee activities and minutes, page 86 to 124. So this is about the Canterbury Regional Transport minutes, which I'm going to speak to, and the attendees at GCP. They've got me down to speak to that, but I would say if there's anything coming out of that GCP stuff, then Councillor Southworth and Councillor Edge can respond to those things. There is, so in terms of the Canterbury Regional Transport, those minutes are there. they outline what's going on. Has anybody got any questions around those CR Canterbury Regional Transport Committee minutes? So there's the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan, Canterbury Public Transport Plan. It's going to be informed by two processes, one from the GCP area, which Council Southworth will be there to hear submissions on that, and one from the regional sector, and myself, will hear the submissions myself. Mayors Black, Bowen and Brown will hear those submissions, and the reason for that is that we've got My Way in Timaru, we've got both Councillor Black and Mayor Black. Don't call him councillor, I'm getting in trouble calling him councillor. So Mayor Brown and Mayor Black have also got some interest in it. Okay? Black and brown, not black and white, it's black and brown, yeah. So that's that. And then the Regional Land Transport Plan.
Just had a question around the Regional Land Transport Plan. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer it, but it would be nice to get an update about how the consultation is going on that. And
noting on page 97 and 98, the amendments sought by the Waimakariri District Council and Whakakapi about the Regional Land Transport Plan.
Talked about GCP minutes, or Mihi, are you sufficiently up to date with that?
Just really, I mean, the key thing last time, obviously the Greater Christchurch Partnership, the Greater Christchurch strategy has been working its way through. I know Councillor Edge has been really heavily involved in that side of things, but in the last meeting, the focus was particularly around housing. And so in actual fact, Chair Scott, you've been involved in a smaller group that's really been brainstorming and figuring out what to do about that. But the affordable housing and smaller housing units was the key focus. We have a good Christchurch-based organisation that is facilitating affordable housing, the Otatahi Community Housing Trust, I think it is, and looking at whether that could be expanded out in some way and support other parts of our Greater Christchurch area to improve housing numbers. But I think you probably can speak more to that.
It's a particularly good piece of work that's been done in GCP. There's a really good diagram on page 108, and it's about not talking about just how many houses you need. It's actually the categories that people and assisted ownership. That mechanism actually houses. Don't forget, if you move the next one, you can tag each of those groups. And the biggest area of concern is young working couples who haven't got enough equity in them to buy a house, and the pressure that comes on them that they will go, they pick up and go to the Gold Coast, and so that's, you're losing your capital of those people that are working in an area that they can't get a break from anyone. And so those are sorts of things that we think about. Moana is the lady, just fantastic energy, that woman. Actually, I mean, she is doing such a good job, and she's fully supported by the mayors. And I'm really just water skiing, Vicky, actually behind all her work. Actually, I'm just there going, nodding at, yeah, keep going, Lucy, keep going. But it is a good piece of work because it actually is getting down in some of the detail. Grant.
Yeah, just picking up on page 122, 23. For the meeting on the 8th of December, it was really just a minor change about the reporting of the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee of the report from the hearings panel, which will come to the committee on Friday. This Friday, yeah. So that'll be good. And on Friday, I think the other thing on Friday that is going to happen is just some discussion about implementation, priority setting, and what are we going to
so about that, because that was a big piece of work, and I know that I listened to some of the submissions and they are pretty detailed in terms of public transport and those sorts of things. So I mean, I think if we've got an appetite to do that, we should try and fit that in. Clear.
Yeah, my question of clarity was around that, because it was initiated from the changing of the terms of reference there. My understanding is that the Whakanaki, whatever it was called, Whakakapi Karakia committee was a true committee, not a working group or not a subcommittee of Greater Christchurch. So I'm quite interested to understand why the reporting mechanism online is different to what I would have assumed, given the context that's down below it on page 122. Because it's suggesting to me that the other committee is setless to requirements, really.
I was stab at that. My understanding is that there was a feeling because of the changing government, transport and housing, and there's a feeling that rather than waiting and holding things up through the changing government and what they might do with those, that we come through the committee.
That's right, and I think that there is substantially the two big pieces of work that done, which was the spatial planning piece of work and also the MRT piece of work, are at a stage now. You know, do they need arms around them still as much as what we had? And so those are the questions that the members of that committee are asking themselves, actually, about what does this mean and where does this go? And then how does that fit into any emerging GPS or ministerial support for what we're doing?
So supplementary then, so what's the process for getting that clarity? Does this alternative committee, is it going to have a life? What's the process about how we get that clarity? Has there been some thought around that?
I think that I'll ask Stephanie to actually to put some information in here. I'm seeing it from a governance point of view. The really interesting concept. I don't know if you can say anything to that, Stephanie, or not. But if you could, it'd be nice, actually.
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. And Councillor Mackay, I appreciate that there is change afoot and it does get confusing. The Greater Christchurch Partnership and the committee itself, obviously, were created to bring the different councils together around public transport and urban design. And then the Whakapānaki committee was agreed because ministers were keen to have central government and local government work together. With the change in government, there is the question now whether they wish to do so in that same form. So you'll recall that the Greater Christchurch Partnership and the committee is an advisory committee, and those members will consider this, and any decisions around change would have to come back to each council. So options need to be prepared. There is an independent chair who is
Councillor Southworth or Edge intending to let councillors know, particularly Christchurch regional councillors, that the draft Greater Christchurch spatial plan was available to the public.
You've just let the public know. I don't think it's been pretty well publicised.
I guess the question then is, how do you feel about that? Thanks, Oliver. That these are unconfirmed minutes of Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, unconfirmed minutes of Greater Christchurch Partnership, and the confirmed minutes of the Greater Christchurch Partnership. Someone like to move that? Thank you. Is that a hand, yeah? Thank you, Vicky. Vicky, Councillor Southwood and Councillor Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So the next matter is 8.3, which is nomination of the expert panel. I think you're coming to the table, Stephen, to present this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this matter here relates to getting the council's endorsement around nominations to expert consenting panels that relate to the COVID fast track consenting process, which you'll probably all recall was run by the EPA. These nominations have been recommended through the Regulation Hearing Committee, and I'm happy to talk about any of them. They also seek nominations from mana whenua. So they ask us and they ask mana whenua, and EPA decides who the expert panel will be. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, Stephen. I have a question, and actually what you just said is that there is an option for mana whenua or tangata whenua to actually have a representative on here?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. So EPA run this fast track consenting process. They ask for nominations from the regional council and also directly from impacted or affected mana whenua at place.
Okay. So, and with so you've got Justine Ashley, and I found her actually. So because there was a mistake with her surname, but so with Justine, what you're wanting here is there's a recommendation to be a member of the Papakainga Development Expert Consenting Panel.
So what you can see in the recommendation is the first, number one is for a person that to be nominated to the expert hearing panel being recommended by the regulation hearing committee, and we need council endorsement to enable that to happen. Those processes are historic, so this is catching up essentially our administration around that.
Her expertise, but I mean, Papakainga, I thought was actually something that was quite specific, you know, to Māori initially, but now it's become a buzzword, and it's becoming more and more likened to, you know, collective community living. I just thought, yeah, I know she's Planet, Selwyn District Council, Resource Consent Planner, and all of that, but I don't see any experience actually, you know, with actually working with Māori within Papakainga.
So just quickly through the chair, she didn't end up on the expert consenting panel.
Yeah, just to reiterate, look, at the RHC, we asked questions about the appointments, and one of the things we asked was around iwi, you know, the iwi and the cultural knowledge of some of the hearing panelists. And what we were assured of is that the EPA asked the iwi directly for a representative or for a recommendation, sorry, about an expert panel member. So we left that to the iwi, and we're focused on our, you know, what we can bring to the matter. And but I did raise that I think it is good for us to really focus on a lot of these urban development matters when we're proposing expert panelists, rather than just planners. I think stormwater expertise is really critical, especially in light of, you know, where we're at with that. So I just think that's something that I'm keen, and I did promote that at the RHC, so just so you know.
I think just for fellow council members that haven't been on RHC, it's just a Evans alluded to. I mean, just because you put a nomination on, then the expert panel actually makes that selection. Makes a selection for the expert panel. So, yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Well, that's just a clarification on what you just said there before. You said Justine wasn't approved onto the. So does that mean our resolution that we're making is null and voided, or I just?
No, it's a matter of process essentially. So the regulation hearing committee, they recommended that she was on the panel. EPA decided she wouldn't be. So that is not a decision for this council.
Thank you, Councillor.
I was just confused about number 2's wording. Approves the nominations of the recommended blah blah. But yeah, I was on it.
Ian, and then David.
David wants to go first.
I'm just picking up on Dion's point there about Justine Ashby not being recommended by EPA, but we're to wear the cart before the horse. Surely this should have been dealt with before they made their decision. So it looks a bit odd that we are confirming a nomination that has already been declined.
That's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. So this here is just a process that the council is catching up to ensure that the Regulation Hearing Committee doesn't have the delegated authority to make these actual recommendations, but these had already been made previously. But we're catching up those last four. And you're absolutely right, they should have come through this council earlier.
Well, my question really is these projects, have they already been, the process has already happened? We're not in the oxymoron position of having a fast track regulation process, which was meant to be done in 2020, and we're still deciding whether to process it.
So those, all of the 1s and 2, have procedural matter to ensure we have the right delegations in place. Number 1, that is absolutely hasn't been to the EPA yet, and it will, and it's within the time frame.
Thank you, Stephen. You can step away. I think we've had a longer discussion here than the RHC has as a meeting, actually. So thank you for that. So and thank you for a straightforward explanation of that. And I think it is pretty straightforward. If we get somebody, we'll put that up there, but we just need to move it. So Claire will move that. Dion, you'll second that. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carry. So now, Catherine, I'll ask you, is Catherine here? Catherine, I'll ask you to come to the table. This is 8.4, election of Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee Chair. And you're going to introduce this. I beg your pardon? You look like Lisa. Did I miss a memo? What's going on?
Sure, councillors. Yeah, this is a paper that's been put forward to seek nominations and election of chair for the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee. And I think the paper sets out process well, which governance will run the process, but it's just, if there's any other questions about the content of the paper before you get into that process, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Need to approve the process, which is 1.1, 1.1.1. So I'd like to move that. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Grant. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carry. We'll get into the processes. Do we have nominations for the position of Chair of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity? Councillor Karakia.
Kia ora, koutou haere. I would like to nominate the Deputy Chair of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee, Councillor Nick Ward, for the position of Chair.
Anyone prepared to second? Councillor Byrnes.
I would like to nominate Craig Pauling, Councillor Pauling.
Seconded by Councillor Edge. We're going to move and second any further nominations. Okay, nominations closed. So I'll go to Councillor. We'll do this in this order. We'll go the way we did it. So, Councillor Ward, then the seconder to speak, and then we'll go the mover and seconder for Councillor Pauling. Sorry, Councillor Davies. I think we did.
Would the candidates have a right to speak? Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I was just waiting on your nod. So can I first of all just give an overview of exactly what this committee is? So it's the Biodiversity and Biosecurity, Land and Water, Flora and Fauna. And then under it, its budget at this stage, 23-24, is 25 million. And then what it has, what its role is around braided rivers revival, leading and partnering for biodiversity outcomes, Mihi Rako, which is the forestry strategy, and then also priority habitats and wetland protection and regional pest management. So just a bit of an overview of what this is. So when this committee was formed in this triennium, then you had Councillor Byrnes, who was the first chair, and then you had Councillor Nick Ward as his deputy. I'm supporting Councillor Ward under the auspices of, first of all, that it is actually about succession and it's about continuity. So you've got a deputy that has now actually has the opportunity to step to the chair of this committee. And then I think that role of continuity is really important. The second part of this is that we have to look at the skill base as well. And particularly when we look at, and he will speak for himself, but what I've seen is particularly around commercial skills, governance, of the other nomination in our deputy chair of Canterbury Regional Council. And then looking at the appointments, and I stand to be corrected, but I counted that our deputy chair has 5 either deputy roles or chair roles of other committees. And so when we look at
Point of order, that's regarding the other candidate, not the candidate who Nick has nominated for this role.
Okay, so Councillor Ward has his committee, yeah, and if he chairs, he's the deputy chair of this one, and now we're actually, the process is about appointing a chair. So looking at his workload, and also the fact is that not because he's a new councillor, but we have to give opportunities to those actually in their first terms to be able to, develop even better skill bases within these committees. This is not a political appointment. It's actually about skills, and this is where it should stay. And it's about continuity. So that is why I am nominating Councillor Nick Ward for the chair's position of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Committee Chair.
Thank you. Look, I didn't explain properly the process we'll do here, that we'll ask mover and seconder, then the nominee to speak, and we'll do that in both cases. Then we'll open the floor up for general debate, and then we'll go to the vote. So the seconder, who seconded you?
Clarification, that point of order, okay, taken, but then I have the ability to be able to come back in. Okay, cool, thank you.
So just for clarity, yes, I did. Just for clarity, if I speak now, I can still speak later. Well, the point of order, murky the water. They can come back in. So in which case, all I can say is I have confidence that Nick would do a superb job as chairman, and that's why I supported his nomination. I'll talk later about the relative merits of the candidates.
Just a bit of rationale and context to the point of order. It's just that in the past, when we've had election of people into chairs and so on, there was questions going into discussing candidates who we may be opposing, and so I just felt like to make it.
Can I just clarify just a point of order in our processes? In many institutions, if the chairman died, no, I'm just asking in our protocols, in many organisations, there's an automatic assumption that if the president of the United States dies, he goes, the vice president goes up. Is there any protocol in our organisation?
Yes, there is. Standing orders, we're following standing orders, David. We're following standing orders. That's why we're doing it like this. I had a thought at the time, exactly what you just said. I was told it's wrong. That's why we're doing this. All right, Nick.
Firstly, thank you, Nook, for your kind words and Ian for your support. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about all this process today. But as you all know, I'm a first-term councillor. I come with a lot of previous governance experience. I've sat on many boards, and I'm currently sit on 4 advisory boards for 4 farms. I'm a director of enjoyed my biodiversity and biosecurity roles, and as you know, living in Twizel, I've had a real passion for and done a lot of work around the wallabies and wilding pines. And I believe that we've actually achieved something in that area. I have strong governance skills, as I've said, as a chairman, and a lot of other people in committees that I've been able to vouch for this. I come with an open mind. I don't come with any predetermined agenda. I will be here to do what you, as fellow councillors, want me to achieve in the proper manner. I've got passion, I've got continuity, and so I seek your support today because I believe that I'll do a good job as chairman of Biosecurity.
Back to the nominees. Nominator and seconder for a final say, because if something comes up in the general discussion, then we can cover that off, and that's the reason that we're doing that. So, Councillor Byrnes.
Can I just clarify a point first of all? It was mentioned that the biodiversity of the Braden Rivers is included with this committee. That's not the case, is it? Can I just clarify that it's not the case, though, is it? But it's excluded from the work that the committee does. It's with.
Look, excuse me. We're here to nominate a chairman.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I've made my point. I agree with Councillor Karakia, actually. This is not a political decision. This is about skills. If anyone does a Google search on Councillor Pauling, he has a long and extensive career professionally and within his communities of biosecurity, biodiversity. 2 of the most important documents for this particular committee, the biodiversity strategy and the biosecurity plan. It would be fair to say that Craig is all over those documents. He's also with the biodiversity champions, and I just think he, out of all the people sitting around this table, is by far and away the best choice for this particular role. I'll leave it at that too.
Yes, I'm supporting Craig because of his vast experience in biodiversity and biosecurity, his management skills, years of associating with Canterbury water management strategy work and local work with Runanga and community groups. And he has his tentacles across multiple organisations and trusts who deliver action on the ground in terms of biodiversity. Is contributing to the authoring of the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. It's an exceptionally good piece of work, and I thoroughly support him. He has the skill base, and that's obvious, and he certainly has the support of many people across Canterbury and able to bring them together. And his work on the biodiversity champions is driving those discussions, especially on the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy. So I support him thoroughly for that.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Tuatai tēnā kōrua, Greg Grant, mō tō tautoko ki au, tēnei wā. Kia koutou katoa. This is real simple for me, like biodiversity and biosecurity is where my expertise and skills lie. And I'm keen to help support and lead the upcoming engagement processes for the CBS, or the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy, which is planned for April, as we agreed last December, as well as continuing the work of the Biodiversity Champions, which includes the completion of a regional stocktake, which is due in March. our biosecurity and biodiversity work as it relates to the ECAN land strategy and our future funding models, including proposals in the LTP. So that's what I'm really focused on. I want to see that happen. We've agreed to it, and I'm really keen to help with that process. I've also realised that it's where I want to be. I took on other roles at the start of the triennium, as not alluded to, and that was to really help settle us in. But with the opportunity presented by Greg's resignation and the critical work that is ahead in the next few months, especially on the biodiversity strategy, I'm keen to take it up. So that's what I'm keen to do. And I don't see it, it's a short time, but a critical time, because we will probably restructure our committees going forward anyway. And the other reason is my work on the biodiversity champions, which of course is establishing key relationships with our TLA councillors and staff who work in this area across the region, which is going to be critical to the work we've got, as I said, in the engagement work we've got with the biodiversity strategy. Yeah, and of course, I'll work with anybody. And I'm really happy to work with Nick, and I acknowledge his interest and passion for biosecurity, especially in South Canterbury. And I'll happily work with him. And of course, I prefer to be co-chairs with Nick, but we can't do that. So, alas, I'll put my name forward for this. So, kia ora.
Thank you, Craig. Look, I think at this point in time, we've got this general discussion to have on this. We've got the deputy chair, which is probably a bit more straightforward, possibly. And then we've got 8.5 and PX to do. And I think that we could probably get those done, but going over time. So how do you want to handle this? We're probably going to stop at 12:30, but with your help, we can carry on and finish the whole meeting if you like. So someone would like to mean we extend, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Nook. All those in favour on that we extend till we finish this meeting, say hi. All those in, yeah, all those against. That's carried. So thank you for that. So right, we now had we've had the two nominees for the position of chair speak. There's now an opportunity for others to speak. John Sonkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very, very briefly, in the matter of time, I support Nick Ward, and I support him on the basis that we do need to share our leadership and responsibility. We do run the risk of narrowing our leadership into a handful of 2 or 3 people. We are a council of 16 people. We need to spread that workload. We need those different views at a higher table and a value. So in saying that, I recognise the passion that Nick has for biodiversity and, more importantly, biosecurity, and support him in this space. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I support Craig's candidacy for this position because of his unwavering dedication to Canterbury and her biodiversity. Craig has evidently proven himself as an advocate for planning and ecology within our council. He has also demonstrated his commitment to our community through his career, particularly with regard to Te Ara Kakariki and Te Kakahu Kahukura. His leadership in environmental initiatives speaks volumes about his values and capabilities. Craig is our biodiversity champion. He's the deputy chair of the region. He wants to take this role on because it's his passion. It's why he's here. So I'd urge you all to support his candidacy today.
Thank you. Look, I support the comments that have been made by the mover and Councillor Sonkel and others as well in supporting Nick into this role of deputy chair. I definitely agree it's around sharing workload, and I don't see that that's occurring if the alternative candidate is successful. I ask, how does the first term councillor actually get the opportunity? We're halfway through this term of council, basically. And it just seems to me that this is quite a doorstopper if we don't accept that a vice chair normally, in most social situations and most organisational situations, is actually the person that steps up into the role. And it was alluded to earlier on around the voting when we set positions at this council, that the council actually agreed that Councillor would be the vice chair. I'm just wondering what has actually changed so much since then. So lastly, I believe that Nick is very capable to take on this chair role, to lead the council in the biodiversity. And as he's alluded to, it's the governance skills and his interest in the environment per se that gives me that extreme confidence of his ability to lead this council.
Am I?
This is a tricky one, but I feel for me, it's alluded to previously when I did my notice of motion. I have sat on both sides of this table, really pushing for the coastal environment. When Nook referred to continuity and consistency, that still refers to Craig with me. Look, it's not a personal thing, judging for a chair. However, the underlying reasons for my call on Craig as chair is because he has never, I guess, let me down with regards to the coastal scope, the understanding, and his planning background, and he's consistent, and I will be voting for Craig. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just, I suppose I should say why I'm going to attending committees, and Craig is already the chair of one and the deputy chair of the other, and will be the chair. So, and actually I would have liked Craig to talk to me about this before we got to this point as well, because it may have moved how I thought, but at this moment, you know, I'm going to stick with what's his name? Colleague down there, Nick. Because yeah, I just want to see that. I'm quite keen to see people sort of grow in these roles, and that's really the I mean, that's what we're all here for. So yeah, I think if you're going to pick one off the other, they're just looking at the same thing from a different lens. There's different ways of doing the same thing, and I think that's really what we've come down to. So out the head it goes.
Right. Yeah.
View of the Canterbury Regional Biodiversity Strategy. We do have the ECAN land strategy, especially with the biodiversity opportunities coming forward. The biodiversity funding refresh and the Christchurch targeted rate. Also, Craig mentioned the biodiversity champions, and then looking at that work in April as well. And not only that, I mean, Craig did champion Mihi Rako in the last term, carrying it through to this term as well. So if there's anyone who's going to push all those biodiversity issues forward in the next couple of months, I believe it'll be Craig, as already mentioned through the mover and the seconder, also covered by Councillor Davies, that he has the passion and the drive for this.
Councillor East.
Thank you. I have no doubt that both candidates will do a good job in this role. However, I do support the speakers that have been advocating for Nick, and I think the succession issue is something that we need to address. I don't think we should be having this discussion. Our standing orders are a mess in this particular area. People stand for a position. You're elected as the deputy of a committee, and in my mind, there is a natural assumption that if the chair, for whatever reason, cannot fulfil that role, then the deputy takes over. I appreciate that our standing orders don't at this stage make that provision, but I would just make the point that in my long association with committees, you have a chair, you have a deputy chair, and it is assumed that for whatever reason the chairman cannot continue his duties, that the deputy would step up to that role. I find it somewhat, can't think of the right word, that we're in this position now. I don't think it's a good look, and we'll just have to go to a vote on this one, but I would strongly suggest that we look at our standing orders. This sort of situation should not prevail, and a deputy chair should automatically step up into the role if for whatever reason the chairman can't be there or decides to retire.
Right, so I just want to have a say here. Does anyone else want to have a say? Oh, you will, but I just in this general discussion, I guess, in this general sharing of information with other councillors in terms of the candidates, I would like to also be able to do that. And look, I think I might be the only one in the room that's talked to both of them about this, actually, and got their views on this. And I'm sure, like I do support Craig from the point of I won't be supporting Craig. I do support Craig from the point of view of his passion for what he's doing. He wears that on his sleeve all the time. You know, he does. But I will be for somewhat of the reasons that you're saying. I think it's just because of standing orders, you shouldn't cut some off the knees because they're, you know, there's another process there. I think Councillor Wood's a capable person. He's a particularly good councillor. You know, that area south of Rangatato is 46% of Canterbury. It's a big area. He and I are councillors down there. He does all the work. There's not an issue that he doesn't understand in South Canterbury far more deeply than I do. So I think that you need to acknowledge that you've got someone that's prepared to work there. But sincerely, the reason I would do that, I would support him, is because I tend to agree with you. He is deputy chair. There is a succession that's required there. Maybe we didn't think about this enough. You know, maybe we didn't think about this enough when we put these things in place in this position. I've talked to Craig about what might happen. I think he can guess what might happen. You know, we might have this opportunity very soon, and both of them are reasonably comfortable with that too. So I wouldn't beat anyone up around this table about this. I think we've had the opportunity to talk about it and discuss it the way we should, and so that's all I need to say. Now I will reverse the batting order here. So Councillor Edge, Councillor Byrnes, and Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Crichton.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the discussion hasn't changed my view on who to support in this. You know, for me, the idea of succession is not in our standing orders. It's not necessarily the best issue and the best way of going forward. There may be other ways of kind of engaging with people. But I think that Councillor Swig suggested, you know, having a look through a lens, or that they're both looking at things through a different lens. Well, they sure are. In fact, the lens is well out of focus in terms of the experience and knowledge between the two candidates. And, you know, a few years ago, this council suggested a step change in biodiversity. And we need that step change. We have failed to deliver a step change of a magnitude that the people of Canterbury want. And we're going to get that through the endorsement of Craig Pooling as chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I'll just a couple of things. One is really just to allay any fears that others have discussed supporting Councillor Ward. Councillor Pauling actually has a different remuneration to the rest of us councillors, and that is to reflect the greater expectation upon his time. So I don't think that's actually an issue. As for an automatic understanding that a deputy would fill in for a spot, when we first came in as a new councillor, we were all advised by Councillor Sunkel that the chair of finance was 3IC on the council. Now, if that was the case, the number of times where the chair and deputy haven't been here, that chair role would take over here. That has not been the case. So again, there is no precedent or protocol for that particular thing. So again, nothing's changed. In fact, I'm more as you know, supportive of Councillor Pauling. Thank you.
I think one of the issues is increase in expenditure on this council in this first year of the LTP, which translates into a high 20s actual rate increase. One of the areas where there's clearly a division in the council in terms of attitude is some of the councillors think we should throw money at an issue and not hold anybody accountable for it. And others of us want to see some accountability. I've been reflecting on the level of accountability for the way we spend our biodiversity money over the last few months over the Christmas break, and it was particularly brought to a head at the Lake Clearwater Hut Association meeting, where the girl from DOC reported on the Upper Rangitata biodiversity strategy of pouring money into an issue, and they haven't had a single bird, a fairy tern or ryebill, produce a fledgling chick this year, despite millions of dollars being poured into that. So where's the accountability for this? So I asked myself, which of these two candidates is more likely to give us accountability? And I think that's clearly Nick, because he understands money and he understands accountability. So I think it's critical. And we had a debate at the end of last year around putting another $200,000 to expedite the biodiversity strategy. The staff advice was that $200,000 wouldn't do a single bit of good in expediting that biodiversity strategy, and yet the council was still split on that vote. I'm looking for somebody who will be the chair of this committee, who will actually who makes sure that for every dollar we put into biodiversity actually achieves a good outcome, and I think that's more likely to be Nick Craig.
Kia ora, kai whakahaere. First of all, I feel immensely sad that I'm not going to be bitted and twisted. And the reason for that is because nothing's actually changed here since the beginning of this triennium. Because we find ourselves actually facing off again, and then we're going to go to that tin. But the situation here is that when we look at, I mean, those, and I took all of the discussion with the two candidates. But one thing about leadership, one thing about leading an organisation is actually about tautoko support to try and actually develop those that you're leading. And so when you look at this thing, and when you look at the fact is that, yeah, I mean, Craig has got all of those at the top. The reason here is because we've got someone that is actually the deputy chair. And if we look at succession, we've had all this discussion about succession. But this is the way that you actually develop an organisation's leadership. So this is the reason why we should actually be looking at, if the opportunity arises, well then let's all take it. It's not leaving anyone, because at the end of the day, this whole thing is going to be about, it actually comes back to what we were at the beginning. So be it. And it'll be the luck of the draw. But I'm really sad actually that we still can't, as a council, as councillors, we still can't actually get beyond a number of things. And one of it is actually, it's political. I don't care what anyone says, it is political. And that's a shame. But at the end of the day, I took all this man, and you've heard all the reasons. And one of the big things is actually about accountability. So I don't see any accountability coming out of those who are actually speaking against this candidate. All I'm seeing is that we go back to our silos and then we vote for our guy that we want to put on there. So anyway, that's it. But I still took all the factors that we need to actually get better.
Thank you very much. So we're going to wind this up and we're going to go to a vote on this. There's two ways of doing this. We could call. I'm doing this wrong again, so we'll do Councillor Wood first for and against, then Councillor Pauling second for and against, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay. This is for Councillor Wood.
Councillor Byrnes?
Against.
Councillor Edge?
Against.
Councillor Ward? Councillor Mackay? Councillor Karakia?
Aye.
Councillor Southworth?
Against.
Councillor Diche?
Against.
Councillor Swiggs. Chair Scott. Councillor McKenzie. Councillor East. Councillor Sunkel. Councillor Pauling.
Yes.
Councillor Swiggs. Councillor Cranwell. Councillor Edge. Councillor McKenzie. Councillor Ward. Councillor Robinson. Councillor East. Councillor Karakia. Councillor Sunkel. Councillor Byrnes.
4.
Councillor Davies.
4.
Councillor Southworth. Councillor Mackay. Councillor Scott. Councillor Pauling.
4.
Councillor DJ.
4.
Sorry, what was that?
4.
As predicted. How we're going to do this is that we'll ask Lisa to come up and do that. The first thing that she'll do is to make sure that the two names going into the tin are the same, are not the same. The new chair of the Biodiversity and Biosecurity Massive by lot is Councillor Pauling. Okay, thank you for that. So we'll go to the deputy chair now. Do you still want to be deputy chair? Okay. Thank you for all your advice, councillors. Really appreciate it. What was that? What did he ask?
What's the outcome?
Oh, God, where did he go? Okay, so we'll move now to item, which is the chair's report, which is item 8.5, and you've all had the opportunity to read that. Essentially what it is just lays out the priorities that you've already been, they've already made you aware of, but we can go through those again that I have for what, for the new year for me and progressing through this next period of time, and I'll go through those again, which are the engagement and influence that we can have with this new government as it becomes available to us. The flood risk and resilience issue that we have before that went before the last cabinet actually, and that hopefully that's going to get picked up in the new cabinet by Minister Jones and others, and we'll get the opportunity to talk about that. Progressing the Ngāi partnership across Te Waiponamu. We know that the repeal of that act has been mooted by this government, and we talked about today where we're at with that, and the fact that the Kaiwhakahare and Liz Brown are leading that piece of work with the government, and writing to the Prime Minister. I have written to the Minister of DIA, Simeon Brown, suggesting to Simeon Brown that we will sit in behind the leadership of the Kaiwhakahare and the local Runanga lead chair, Liz Brown, on their response to that. And we will await that, and then we will advise as required from that position. We think that that's the right thing to do. The fourth thing is this, just in terms of where we are with public transport for Greater Christchurch Partnership, where we are for public transport across our region, where we are with responding to any GPS signals that are being brought out, and where we are with the opportunity to, I guess, to engage with Simeon Brown as becomes available I think he's got enough on his plate in the North Island at the moment, so he may not want to come down here. But my understanding is that he will be down soon. RMA and National Direction, we've got Stephanie and I are meeting with Minister Bishop towards the end of this month, Stephanie, to talk about how we see the two acts that have been withdrawn, the Spatial Planning Act and the National Built Environment Act, because there were parts of that which would be easier for us in any RMA reform to, like things about having hard edges on a consenting process and those sorts of things, and what is allowable, what isn't allowable, rather than having too much grey. Everyone's aware of how many consents we have and the issue that we have with those. So hopefully we might have the opportunity, I'm not too sure as whether to influence that, but at least put our thoughts forward, and also support in that Te Uru Kahika, which is the regional governance network of CEs and chairs that are doing a piece of work there also. And also supporting the transition to 3 core services that was mentioned when we were talking about the existence that we have of these committees and how they will be affected by the transformational piece of work that's going on within this business. And then, so that's strategic stuff. And then the tactical stuff we're looking at is that I was part of the Future Local Government panel that made recommendations to the government. So picking that up where an S required. And then we're doing a bit of work on advocacy on rural school bus safety for the South Island. We've got a piece of work coming to RTC. So that's that stuff. I don't know if any councillors want to comment or make a comment on what the rest of this year holds for us. We've got an LTP that's going to be coming to us for acknowledgement, and we've got a rate that's looking interesting, along with everyone else in the country. And so this is going to be an interesting year to walk our way through as this government transitions into a coalition, a true coalition agreement after the first 100 days, and how that affects us. Comment? One happy? One want to get lunch or lunch?
Just quickly, I think this exercise we've just done strikes me that in the development it's going to be critical in the development of the core services and the way that we manage those 3 core services and the responsibilities within that, to broaden the opportunity for more councillors to be involved with more issues. I don't know how we're going to do it, but obviously it's well, I'm saying this genuinely because it's very clear, and Nook said it, that the opportunity and how we go about managing those 3 core services. At the moment, we 5 committees or whatever, but how are we going to enable all councillors to feel comfortable, have more dialogue with each other, smaller groups or whatever. So it's just the process of that we need to explore that really, really well, and going forward, in my view.
I think 3 core service is interesting in itself. That's an organisational reshape, if you like. It's probably hasn't been done. I don't know about ever, but it hasn't been done, and we are actively looking at how do we intersect with that, because the information that comes out of this organisation needs to be channeled through a governance funnel for oversight. That's why we're here. And for setting budgets, that's why we're here. And for setting the strategy, that's why we're here. So we need to get that. There's a real desire to streamline that process. And I think this is an opportunity that if there is a reset, we need a reset too in terms of how we approach that. But you all get a say on that. I know it's not coming from me. That's just that opportunity that will exist there. Other things, I guess, that are coming along. I've met with Minister Hogarth, and I met with Minister Patterson, with John, start of this week. I've met with Minister Dosey and the GCP mayors talking about how we interact with Wellington. There's a desire for us to actually go to Wellington as a mayoral forum and meet multiple ministers if you know. And I've also initiated a piece of work with Megan Woods, Tracy McClellan about Labor members of Parliament for the GCP area coming in to discuss the issues that we have with them. I've also talked to Megan Woods in her capacity that she left as a minister, was the Minister of Energy, and I think she can add some value to discussions that we're having in a regional energy strategy. So we're going to do that. I haven't particularly reached out to the Greens yet, but I'm doing that tomorrow with I'm going to Wellington to listen to Lan's maiden speech. So hopefully the opportunity is then to meet some of those Green MPs and have that similar discussion with them. And they may want to do that differently because there's not a bunch of them. They may want to do that as a group. I don't know, but we are going to. Nick and I have got a forum. I think maybe Ian and John also with our new MPs, James Meager and Miles Anderson. I think we met him on Monday. Is it Monday, Nick? Yeah. To talk about the region and other areas. So we're trying to cover off not just dealing with ministers, but dealing with all people. Because the skill set that exists with some of those people that have left their roles, especially some of those Labour MPs, is pretty strong, and we need to use that. Thank you.
Firstly, just so maybe we could meet with the 4 representatives from Banks Peninsula. There's one from 4 different parties covering Banks Peninsula, so that would be good. But also, I just want to ask a question on a separate topic, which is around the take and use situation with groundwater following the our decision, and what we are planning to do and what mechanisms there might be to expedite a solution, particularly, for example, here in particularly around the red zone in Christchurch, where there's been hold up for years in terms of resolving, moving the area forward. And so, is there something that we can do about that? What are we doing? Are we getting on with it?
Speak with my knowledge. So we've taken the approach to that you're dead right in what you're saying. That is having particular effect in the Christchurch area. And also in the Waimakariri area. We've had constant, I was going to say moaning, it's not moaning, deputations from the mayors and the chief executives of those 2 areas in terms of the our decision. Our advice is that, and we'll still go down this track, but you need to be informed. We're going to inform you before we actually get to a meeting at the end of the month, which you'll get the opportunity to make that decision, so it will be informed by you. Is our opportunity is to still try and fast track a piece of that legislation that is holding up some of that. That staff advice that's going to come to us, I'm not aware of that yet, but it will be specific. Councillor McKenzie.
Well, on that issue, I think we need to have a better idea as to what consents are being held up by the our decision. And it's not just the squeaky wheel of urban and semi-urban development. And any suggestion that we're only going to progress sorting out part of the issue is obnoxious to me.
Maybe that to you, Councillor McKenzie, but we will come to you with a solution that we think is fit for purpose. The problem that we have in terms of looking at the solution is the wider you get, the more you're going to get it tossed back at you and say you need to get on with it yourself. We're being specific on the issues that are holding up the development, and we've been quite clear about that. But as I say, Councillor McKenzie, as I say, that advice will come to you, and you will get the opportunity to talk to it.
You haven't, but we haven't. This council hasn't been clear to us about that issue. That was only, we were given a heads up that was an issue at a briefing last week. That was the first time we've had any clarity on that. So don't say that we've had a clear, and I can list a number of constituents in the rural areas, rural and Ashburton areas, that have been held up by the our decision, and they will want to have the same solution that the people in Christchurch want.
What I'm saying to you is that possibly is not going to be available to them, because that solution for that wider we're not going to get too much into this, but that wider bunch of issues that we have could take 18 months. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, there's been numerous bits of information that outline all the issues across the consenting spectrum around the AWA decision. So I don't think that's totally fair to say that we've only just had one. We've had numerous, and they have outlined all the breadth of those issues. So I feel pretty up to date on that. The solutions to them are not clear. I acknowledge that, Ian. But we've definitely been briefed about what the issues are. Solutions, we're still working on them. So, you know, I agree. Good question, Vicky. But you know, we're going to get some more information coming to us soon. So, and at the next council meeting, I believe.
Get out of this and get to PX. So with some, that the council receives the chair's report. I've got a seconder for that. Thank you, Joe. All those in favour, please say aye. We have someone that moves that we're going to public excluded. Moved by Councillor Cranwell and seconded by Councillor Sunkel. So we're back in the general part of our meeting, the open part of our meeting. Thank you, councillors, for the attention you've paid to the items we had in front of us today, and thank you for your debate. Our next council meeting is on the 28th of February 2024 at 10:30 a.m. And now I declare the meeting closed. I invite Councillor Craig Pauling to finish the meeting for us. Thank you, Craig.
Kia ora tātou, he karakia whakamutunga o tātou nei hui. Unuhia ki turu tapu nui o pāne, kia wātea, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, wairua I te ara takata, koe e rai roko, whakiiriaki ki roka kia pina, aumi e hui e tā, kia ora, Peter. Thank you.